Welcome to Weather Extra. I'm First Alert meteorologist Jillian Johnson. The Atlantic hurricane season was off to a slow start, but that quickly changed over the past week. We had not only our first hurricane of the season develop, but our first Category 5 hurricane at that. Here's how Hurricane Erin impacted the United States last week. Hurricane Erin churned in the Atlantic last week and got too close for comfort for many coastal communities from Florida up to New England. While the U.S. was spared from a direct landfall, the powerful storm still brought life-threatening conditions up and down the East Coast as massive waves and deadly rip currents impacted many Americans. Large waves were seen crashing into piers and homes located along the Atlantic coastline, and high storm surge was also seen flooding some areas too. Erin was a very large hurricane, which made it even more capable of delivering those dangerous conditions along beach communities, despite it staying hundreds of miles offshore. On Wednesday morning, cloud cover associated with Erin grew to more than 800 miles wide. The storm's wind field was also massive, impacting more than 400 miles of the Atlantic, and some of those strong winds did in fact make it on land to the East Coast. Tropical storm warnings and storm surge warnings prompted evacuations for parts of North Carolina's Outer Banks. Erin's outer rain bands, storm surge, gusty winds up to 50 miles per hour, and destructive 15 to 20-foot waves rocked homes sitting along the coast. Near Wrightville Beach, North Carolina, rescue crews conducted nearly 100 water rescues due to strong rip currents. And the strength of Erin continued to cause problems in the ocean up the Atlantic, which caused hundreds of miles of Atlantic beaches to close as families were taking their final vacations of the summer. Erin slowly traveled north, riding along the Atlantic coast, moving between the East Coast and Bermuda all of last week, before finally turning more to the northeast, arriving south of the Atlantic Canada over the weekend, where the storm's impacts were finally no longer felt here in America. We now bring in First Alert meteorologist Sean Bellafury, who has more on the development of Hurricane Erin and some of the records the storm broke as well.
Despite Hurricane Erin not making a landfall, it is still one for the record books. And we're taking you back to what caused it to go into the record books. This is Tropical Storm Erin, Friday, August 15th, starting to get that look that we typically see with the deep convection, those darker colors indicating more showers and thunderstorms, and starting to spiral up. And this was before it became a beast, rapidly strengthening into a Category 5 monster from Friday into Saturday. That small pinhole, almost perfectly symmetrical eye indicates that rapid strengthening trend, but rapidly strengthening hurricanes do tend to weaken like this one did. Still a major hurricane though, all the way up until about Tuesday morning before it made its closest approach to the United States just off the coast of North Carolina Thursday morning. The wind history, I mean, it's such a drastic jump up from that tropical storm Category 1 hurricane to a Category 5 monster, and it's this reason, that big strength increase, that we are putting this in the record books. It's the fourth straight season with a Category 5 hurricane. Tropical storm, or Hurricane Erin, I guess I should say, has the largest 24-hour pressure drop that we've seen before September 1st. It's one of only 11 Category 5 hurricanes to form before September 1st, and it's also the fourth earliest Category 5 hurricane, tying with Hurricane Camille back in 1969. And even though Hurricane Beryl of last year didn't make landfall in Texas as a major Category 5 hurricane, it got that status, the earliest in history, on July 1st. Reporting in the studio, Sean Bellafury, KWTX News 10.
And take a look at this. NOAA's hurricane hunters have released footage of what it was like flying through Hurricane Erin as it was strengthening to a Category 5. That's the view from inside the hurricane's eye, where clear blue skies can be seen in the middle, creating this stadium effect. At this time the video was taken, the eye was about 7 miles wide. And when the eye wall starts to get smaller and tighter, that's a sign of the storm strengthening. You can also see the crew flying through the storm's heavy rain bands and strong turbulence. The hurricane hunters fly into this storm to gather data for the National Hurricane Center to forecast these storms. It's their job to collect critical atmospheric data to help improve forecasts sent out to the public. Now behind me are additional photos from the group of hurricane hunters flying through Hurricane Erin over the past few weeks. A while back, First Alert Chief Meteorologist Brady Taylor had the opportunity to speak with a hurricane hunter who gives us a first-hand view of what it was like flying through these powerful storms.
How cool is that to be involved with something like this, where you know hands-on you're helping to save lives and prepare folks for a major event like this?
You know, it's really tip of the spear type stuff, we like to say in the military, to be able to not just to be able to experience weather in that kind of environment, but to be able to use that and know how critical it is and how you can see the direct impact of what we do, again, to keep the public safe.
What is the turbulence and just the flight through a hurricane? What does that feel like while you are up there working?
It can be pretty smooth sometimes, believe it or not, especially some of the more developed hurricanes where they're just kind of stabilized outside of flying through the eye wall. And so you get those pockets of turbulence. It's a lot, you know, kind of like a roller coaster flying through a car wash at the same time, where you're just inundated with precipitation, and then you get pockets of turbulence where it's a kind of a series of updrafts and downdrafts where you can, you know, lose or gain several hundred feet, 1,000 feet in altitude going through an eye wall instantaneously almost.
So we talk about the eye wall where it's the most intense, but you get to see something that very few people do when you move from the eye wall into the eye. Explain the stadium look and just how awe-inspiring it is being inside of that eye of that storm.
Yeah, again, that's hard to describe with words too. Pictures don't even, videos that you all have seen out there don't even do it justice. But with these strongest hurricanes, you immediately break out, and during the day, you know, clear blue sky above you and around you. And like you said, Brady, the stadium effect, kind of imagine yourself standing in the middle of a football field and what the stadium seating would look like up and around you, all the way around you. And that's what it looks like and it feels like inside the storm. It is awe-inspiring.
An ongoing concern across America's Gulf Coast is the rate of erosion that's currently ongoing. CBS's Katie Weiss reports on a coastal erosion project that's meant to protect against a hurricane's powerful effects.
Louisiana's coast is under threat. A quarter of the state's wetlands have disappeared in the last 100 years, an area the size of Delaware. The wetlands are a critical buffer that shield Louisiana communities from monster hurricanes.
We want more protection. We want more redundancy.
Massive flood walls and these man-made marshes are helpful.
You can reduce storm surge up to a foot with just a mile of coastal wetlands.
Alicia Renfro and Simone Laws with the nonprofit Restore the Mississippi River Delta say that's not enough.
A tough lesson that we learned after Katrina, we have to think long term. We also have to think bigger.
It's been 20 years since Hurricane Katrina exposed the extent of the coastal erosion. Since then, satellite images show even more loss of marshland, an estimated 200,000 acres.
If these marshes aren't here anymore, what happens?
I think that's a future we don't want to think about.
Yeah.
They believe a proposed $3 billion project would have been the best way to save Louisiana.
We are very short on money, we're short on natural resources, and we are short on time.
The project would have diverted Mississippi River sediment to rebuild about 17,000 acres of land over the next 30 years. That would have the potential to absorb up to 10 feet of storm surge. But not everyone could see the benefits. Third-generation oysterman Mitch Jurisic filed suit to stop it.
Why were you so opposed to this project?
Because I know what it would have done our fishing industry, our commercial fishing industry here. And when you look around this harbor full of commercial boats, full of life, it would have just totally wiped us out.
Government records also showed it would have increased flooding and storm surge to some homes south of the site. This month, Louisiana Governor Jeff Landry scrapped the project, even though $600 million was already spent.
It's not my fault that y'all wasted money. It's your fault. Because you pushed this down our throat, knowing we didn't want it.
Jurisic says smaller man-made marshes like this one could be cheaper and wouldn't sacrifice his community for the rest of the state. But it's only a temporary fix.
They are dependent on those coastal wetlands that are disappearing, and once those wetlands are gone, the fisheries collapse. Doing nothing isn't an option.
A race to save this bayou region for everyone. Katie Weiss, CBS News, New Orleans.
Up next on Weather Extra, we discuss the upcoming anniversaries of two historic hurricanes that struck the United States over the past 2 decades. We'll be right back with that and more. Welcome back to Weather Extra. The peak of hurricane season statistically hits on September 10th, but the Atlantic's most active stretch typically arrives by mid-August, which we know has been true this year with the increase in tropical activity. Now, in the history of the U.S., the month of August has produced some extremely violent hurricanes over the past few decades. Looking back from the year 2000 through 2024, in August there have been 23 hurricanes, 24 major hurricanes, and 53 tropical storms. And we have two monumental August hurricanes reaching their anniversaries this upcoming week. Here's more on that. Monday, August 25th marks 8 years since Hurricane Harvey impacted the Lone Star State. Harvey first made landfall near Rockport in south central Texas. Harvey was a powerful Category 4 hurricane at the time of landfall, bringing 130-mile-per-hour winds, heavy rain, and a massive storm surge that took over coastal areas. Harvey was a unique storm as it stalled over southeast Texas and made 3 different landfalls, 2 in Texas and 1 in Louisiana over a 6-day period. This storm not only brought catastrophic winds, but it also brought an unimaginable amount of rain to south and southeast Texas. Some of the hardest hit areas were towns and cities around Houston, where multiple feet of rain fell in many places. Harvey is the wettest tropical cyclone on record in the U.S. The storm dumped more than 27 trillion gallons of rain over the Lone Star State. The highest recorded rainfall total was 60.58 inches, which occurred in Nederland. The extreme rain flooded hundreds of thousands of homes, which displaced more than 30,000 people and prompted more than 17,000 rescues. Hurricane Harvey caused $125 billion in damage back in 2017. That price, due to inflation, is now at $160 billion today. Harvey ranks as the second costliest natural disaster to have ever hit the U.S. mainland since 1900. The most costly was Hurricane Katrina, which caused over $200 billion in damage today. Here's a look at the list of top 10 costliest natural disasters in the history of the U.S. since the 1900s. As you can see, Katrina is first, followed by Harvey. Some of the other notable hurricanes on the list are Category 4 hurricanes Ian, Ida, and Maria. Hurricane Helene from last year is also on the list as the 7th costliest natural disaster in our nation's history. Now, speaking of Hurricane Katrina, the 20th anniversary is Friday, August 29th. This infamous storm carved a path to destruction from Miami to New Orleans and eventually up the eastern United States. The storm did reach Category 5 strength with its strongest wind speeds reaching 175 miles per hour. Katrina weakened some back to Category 4 strength as it made landfall in Louisiana, just 45 miles southeast of New Orleans. At the time of landfall, winds were around 125 miles per hour. The significant force of Katrina's storm surge and the flooding rainfall caused a disaster many did not see coming. 80% of New Orleans will be underwater due to multiple levees breaking around the city. More than 1 million people were displaced due to the storm. Katrina is also the second deadliest hurricane in the United States history, causing over 1,800 deaths. The most deadly hurricane was the Galveston hurricane of 1900, which was estimated to have taken the lives of 8,000 to 12,000 people. The federal government invested nearly $15 billion to rebuild and strengthen the levee system around New Orleans after Katrina struck. But now, 20 years later, there's a new warning about this city's flood defenses. A study says the walls meant to protect the city are sinking. Katie Weiss joins us again with more on the flood walls surrounding the Big Easy.
When Hurricane Katrina hit the Gulf Coast 20 years ago, the storm surge reaching 10 to 20 feet was no match for New Orleans. Water rushed in as dozens of levees failed, flooding 80% of the city and leaving over 1,300 dead. Nearly $15 billion was spent in the aftermath to strengthen New Orleans' concrete flood walls. But a new study from Tulane University finds some of them have been sinking nearly 2 inches a year.
It's a wake-up call.
Meade Allison is the study's co-author.
What do you think might happen if this is not addressed?
There is certainly a potential in the future, if these rates continue, to degrade our level of protection of the flood protection system.
Using satellite technology, researchers tracked ground elevation shifts between 2002 and 2020. They found more rapid sinking in some wetlands, neighborhoods, and even near New Orleans' airport.
It's just sad. It's sad.
Cynthia Viltis lives in one of those vulnerable communities.
When we purchased our place in 2022, they said this is the best place to be because it didn't flood.
Much of New Orleans lies below sea level, and as sea levels rise and the ground sinks, the threat of a deadly storm surge increases. If trends continue, researchers worry the area marshes could become open water in just 10 years.
If nothing else than the disaster of Katrina of epic proportions, at least it got us a really high quality protection system. Our goal is to just make sure it's going to be here in 100 years.
Katie Weiss, CBS News.
Straight ahead on Weather Extra is this week's episode of Degrees of Science. In our conversation this week, we hear more about the deadliest tornado in our nation's history that ended up taking the lives of 695 people. More on that when we come back. Welcome back to Weather Extra. 100 years ago, the deadliest tornado in U.S. history struck parts of Missouri, Illinois, and Indiana. In this week's Degrees of Science, Brady had the chance to speak with a meteorologist from the National Weather Service to learn more about the historic tri-state tornado.
For people that don't know, what was the kind of path of this storm and areas that were impacted by this tri-state tornado?
Well, it ran from southeast Missouri across the length of southern Illinois and then dissipated in southwest Indiana. So it went across 3 states, and it was moving fast, it was wide, and it still holds some of the records for fatalities in a town, fatalities in a school. It's still a history-making event.
So there was a 40-minute stretch as the storm was moving through Illinois that it impacted towns like Murfreesboro, DeSoto, 541 people dying in 40 minutes. I mean, really those towns there, I'm speaking of Murfreesboro particularly, how much was the destruction just devastating in that area?
Really, the entire town was damaged from the storm, but the most intense damage was across the north part of town. And then, as would be the case back then, fires broke out because the storm scattered the various stoves, the wood-burning and coal-burning stoves that they had. And so fires became an issue then for the next day or two. So it was just one of the nastiest scenes you could imagine.
And with this being an early afternoon storm, and again, lack of really preparedness, schools became a big issue where they got hit by this tornado as well, right?
That's right. I think the death toll at DeSoto still remains the largest loss of life in a tornado at a school. And so I think Murfreesboro still holds the record for the largest loss of life in a community. So those 2 communities are just a few miles apart. So the tornado was very intense at that point and very wide, and the destruction was just incredible.
So the official forecast from the Weather Bureau that day was rain and strong shifting winds. Fast forward 100 years, now we've got the National Weather Service where you work, Storm Prediction Center. How different would the communication be and advance warning be for something, a storm system potentially like this?
It would be vastly different. I mean, it would have been talked about for several days in advance. So the communities in the path would have been on a heightened level. A tornado watch would have been in effect for it. Media folks would have instantly gone into really expanded coverage once the tornado was obvious and moving, and it was the single tornado that crossed in there. It wasn't like that there were multiple tornadoes also going on around it. So there'd have been a lot of attention the media would be able to focus on and give to that. And so everything would have been in place, and you have emergency management and responders that would have had spotters in the area, also radioing information. And of course, storm chasers. There probably would have been live video off and on through the path. And so it would have been just night and day difference between now and then.
To learn more about the tri-state tornado in Brady's full Degrees of Science episode, scan the QR code on your screen to watch on YouTube or go to KWTX.com/Degrees of Science. Weather Extra returns after this. Welcome back to Weather Extra. Back towards the end of June of this year, a fireball was seen shooting across the skies of several states, including Georgia. CBS's Dave Malkoff was in Athens and shows us how the extraterrestrial visitor has an extraordinary past.
As if fire in the sky over Georgia crashing into a family's roof isn't spectacular enough.
We're going to take a look here.
Just wait until you see what a shooting star looks like up close.
This is the thing I love about these microscopes.
Wow, it just changed the color. What I'm seeing is an iridescent brightness shining back at my eyes.
The specific chemistry in those minerals does not occur here. It had to have been formed on somebody out in space.
Those little black specks in there are older than Earth. They formed as melted droplets in space when the sun was just getting its planets in line more than 4.5 billion years ago.
You can touch it? Larger ones. Oh yeah, you can.
University of Georgia researcher Scott Harris went to the house and collected the meteorite.
The pieces that, like the one you're holding there, those stayed within a few feet of the crater.
So that hole in the guy's floor is technically a crater hit by a supersonic space rock while the mystery man was on a Zoom call.
If that Zoom would have been recording.
Yes.
The homeowner let Harris take these photos, but doesn't want any meteorite hunters or nosy reporters poking around his house.
So this thing is traveling through the solar system. It comes through the atmosphere, breaks up, and goes directly to this guy's house.
Could not have picked a calmer individual's house.
If this box is the man's house, this is how the rock came flying in.
These were clean shot holes through the roof, through the attic. There's still debris in their furniture, up on the refrigerator, on the mantle. Months later, they're still picking out dust from the fabric of their sofa.
The family is now cutting out these holes in the house on every layer so they can eventually go to a museum for everyone to see.
There's also one place where there's almost certainly a little bit of this dust, and that's in his lungs.
But he's not going to get any superpowers from that, is he?
Well, we can hope, right?
Dave Malkoff, CBS News at the University of Georgia in Athens.
Well, that's this week's episode of Weather Extra. We're back again next weekend with more weather and science stories. Have a great week. We'll see you next time.